I'm Betsy Skrobot from Sweet Dolce. It is the holiday season, so today we're going to focus on pie crusts. We've had some clients of ours ask how to make the perfect pie crust, and so we thought we'd throw a little demo video together for you. We have some ingredients that we need to look at, so come on over here and I'll show you what we put in our pie crust. The first thing that we add is our flour. We have a standard all-purpose flour. We also have table sugar. We have a table salt as well. And then in our freezer, kept nice and cold, we have some ice water. We have some pieces of equipment that are also going to be necessary. The first and most important thing that we're going to use is what's called a pastry. We also have a pastry brush. We have over here what's called a dough cutter, our great rolling pin, and it's nice and heavy, and then we have a scale. We use our scale so that we can make sure all of our dough is the same size. My scale functions in both American and metric systems, and I tend to use the metric more just because it's a little bit more accurate. We have 2 pieces of parchment paper that we're going to roll our dough between, and then we have our bowl. Then the last ingredient that we have that we hadn't mentioned was butter. Of course, we use real butter at Sweet Dolce. We don't use lard or shortening, I should say. We like the flavor of butter. It adds a lot of depth and smoothness to everything that we make, so we opt for taste and we work with the texture to make sure that it's perfect. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is we are going to add our flour to our bowl. And we're going to make sure that we sift it so that all the lumps are out. So our flour is all fine and sifted. Then we're going to go ahead and add our sugar and our salt. There's a little bit left in there. We'll get that out. And then our butter. Now, our butter has been chilled in the refrigerator, and you can see that it's cubed. We've gone ahead and pre-cut that into cube sizes. The reason we do that is because we want to make sure that we work the dough as little as possible. So we cut our butter into small cube sizes that are even in size. Now, this is a big batch. We're going to make 3 doughs off of this, or 3 pie crusts. We have our butter in the bowl and we keep it chilled. We want to make sure that the butter is nice and cold so that it doesn't melt and coat all of our flour. We want to make sure that our pie crust is very, very flaky. There are actually 2 kinds of pie crust that we can make off of this same recipe. One is called a mealy pie crust and one is called a flaky pie crust. Today we're going to be making a flaky pie crust. In order to make a flaky crust, what we want to do is make sure that our butter is in larger chunks throughout our flour. If we were making just a mealy pie crust, we would incorporate the butter a longer length of time and it would turn out to be more of a cornmeal texture, where with a flaky pie crust, it's going to be more of a pea size inside of our flour mixture. So we have our pastry cutter, and we're just going to incorporate our butter into our flour. Come on in so you can see a closer view. And you can see that I just twist my pastry cutter and that forces that butter down onto the bottom of the bowl. And we're going to go around with all of our bowl, I should say, and continue doing this until our butter is nice and incorporated. The official term for what we as Americans call a pie crust is actually called a pâte brisée. That's the standard name for an American pie crust. So if I slip every once in a while and say pâte brisée, you know what I'm talking about. We're almost there. See how our pieces of butter are getting a little bit smaller. So we're going to work it just a little bit longer. And I'd say we're just about there. Okay, now you can see in here that we have some larger chunks that are more pea-sized, and they're distributed throughout. That looks perfect. So now we're gonna come and add our water. You can see we have a lot of water here, and we're not going to use all of this water. We're gonna add just a small amount at a time. We don't wanna add the ice cubes in the bowl. So you're just gonna use your hand to strain some of that water in. And then come back with your pastry cutter and incorporate that water by scraping the sides of the bowl. What we don't want to do at this point is to incorporate the butter anymore. We just want to stir it so that the water is incorporated into the mixture. We need just a little bit more, not too much more. Some people, when they're making their pie crusts, will add an acid also. And acid, it can be a lemon juice, it can be wine, it can be vinegar. And the purpose of the acid is to help break down that gluten structure and create a softer, more tender crust. Now we're going to shift from the bowl right out onto our work surface. And we don't want to overwork our dough. If you remember at the beginning of this, I told you that our dough, the butter that is in our dough, we need to keep nice and cold so that when it's in the oven, it melts and it creates a nice flaky pie crust. So you can see all through here, these are little bits of butter. And that's very nice. That's exactly what we want. And you can see that the dough is not sticky. It's staying together very nicely. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to wrap this with some cellophane. And we'll leave it wrapped in the cellophane in the refrigerator for about, half hour, 45 minutes or so. Now I want you to get a closer look at this. See those beautiful, beautiful pieces of butter in there. Not totally incorporated. That'll make a really, really nice flaky pie crust. All right, so in the refrigerator it goes. For about a half hour, and we'll talk next about rolling it and making it the perfect shape for your Thanksgiving feast or your holiday feast.